half. That's a half hour late. 7:30. We are live, and tonight we're going to talk about big block Chevy cylinder heads, more specifically the Airflow Research 265 heads. And the reason that I singled those out is a lot like peanut port heads. Oddly enough, I get more questions on those specific aftermarket heads than I do on anything else. And it's the same with the peanut port heads. Like, I get way more questions on peanut port heads than I do on either oval or factory rec port heads. I've tested, a lot of both of those, a lot of both of the factory ones, and obviously tested peanut port heads, both stock ones and ported versions of the peanut port heads. But guys want to know, maybe because, like with the peanut port stuff, that's kind of the underdog, let's say, of all of that probably would be the last choice of the vast majority of big block people. Sure, it's a small port, and the small ports make torque and all of that nonsense. Maybe at part throttle, but I just haven't seen that be the case, even from 2000 on up. That if you get a good flowing head, even if it has a bigger port than a peanut port, it just makes both more power and torque. So there are limitations to things like that. The interesting thing is I get guys that want to ask about, in both situations, not so much for the higher horsepower stuff. Like, we made 620 or something like that with a set of AFR 265 small oval port heads. And most guys look at those, most big block guys, primarily, I think, because we were conditioned, if you grew up around big block Chevys, or you've read about them, or you've followed the magazines back in the day, or even the testing, in the digital age, that big block stuff, we know that the more, there's a hierarchy for factory big block stuff. And then that kind of dictated what was happening with the aftermarket stuff. So in the factory stuff, rec port was king. So the higher horsepower stuff, the L88, the L72, the L78, all of these versions of the performance versions of these big block Chevys, they all got rec port heads. Those are the high flowing ones. They had the big valves. They could have had big or small chambers depending on what year it was. But those were the hot setup. L88, L89, ZL1, if you had that. And then the next step down, the more pedestrian vehicles got what we call now standard oval ports, because we have to designate those. We have to differentiate those from the peanut port heads that came later. So you had standard oval ports. Back when they first started, you had oval ports and you had rec ports. That was it. So you use oval ports on mild street applications, use rec ports on the big high performance stuff. Except that guys soon found out that some of the good oval ports, like 049s and the like, that you could make those flow very well and work very well. And in a lot of cases, the big rec port stuff, because a rectangular port doesn't utilize most of its surface area for flow, because the corners just don't flow very well. There's very little there. So they started rounding those, and then we got rovals and all of that stuff. A rectangular port combination between ovals and rec port ones. And then when GM ushered in the we're only revving these things to 4,000 RPM kind of things, when they went to the peanut port stuff, none of those motors were making, very much power. They were throttle body injected. And so they were carbureted or throttle body injected. I think that they had peanut ports on some carbureted stuff too. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that. But we know that it was on the Gen 5 peanut port stuff or on the Gen 5 throttle body injected stuff, and those things are only making between 230 and 250 horsepower, or they're about 255 horsepower, so not very much. So the port didn't have to support very much power, and so they made them smaller because maybe the thinking was, we can make more torque by doing that. Whether or not that was the case, and they had mild cams in them and all of that. So then we had three to choose from. We had rec ports, oval ports, and then peanut ports. And then not very many people chose the peanut ports. They had a lot of them. There were a lot of them available. Certainly, way more than as we go farther and farther away from 60s and early 70s. You know, the first Mark IV motors that came out in the big block stuff. You just don't find those, and so you'll find Gen 5 and Gen 6 stuff. And then when we went from Gen 5 to Gen 6, we went back to a standard size oval port, very small combustion chamber, 102 cc's are the ones that we measured. Not excuse me, not a performance head, but better in a number of ways than a peanut port predecessor. So 96 and up or 97 and up, Gen 6 motor on the 454s, those heads are better. They're 102 cc chambers, so they're going to be much higher compression than 120 cc or so head is. It's not going to be a peanut port anymore. It's going to be a standard size oval port, so it flows more. So those are better. But then we get into aftermarket stuff. The sky's the limit for big block Chevys. You can get up to very, very good cylinder heads in a 23 or 24 degree head, and then even crazier stuff in altered valve angle stuff. So you could get, some really shallow valve angle stuff and get a ton of flow. You get 400, 500, 600 CFM, whatever in race heads. You could get a ton of that. But I did a test with the AFR 265 heads, mostly because I tested a lot of way back when, just like I did with the LS stuff and what I did with the small block Ford stuff on the big block Chevys. I tested a lot of cylinder heads. So I gathered together like 8 or 10 oval port heads and then 8 or 10 rec port heads, and we ran them on a variety of different motors, or on 2 different test motors that made good power. And then I did some testing with blowers on the different heads and stuff. So I did a lot of big block stuff. But the AFR 265 heads, the really small ports, that a lot of guys, because we would be conditioned to look down on that, oh, that's almost like a peanut port head, except it's a peanut port head that makes more than 600 horsepower and makes more than if you were to bolt a rec port head on there, a factory iron rec port head. A 265 airflow research head would just kill it. I mean, it's just not even close. And in fact, I did that comparison. And an oval port obviously would do worse, and a peanut port would do even worse. But they do flow a ton, or enough to make this kind of power level. But honestly, if it's just like everything else, if you're trying to make the most power with an M90 supercharger, or the most power with a low buck truck camshaft, or the most power with one of our GTX 3584 RS turbos from RHP, if you're trying to get the most out of that, you should step up to the next thing. It's just it makes a lot more sense. Trying to get the absolute most, the limit of that, I salute that. But it's just so much work. And you get to the point where you really have to spend some money to do that. And it just doesn't make any sense. Put an oval port 290 or 300 head on, or a rec port head. Put a set of 315s or 335s or whatever, 345s, 355s, whatever. Put something on there that has all kinds of flow and can make all kinds of power, if that's what your goal is. But like I said, on the 265 head, guys are asking, hey, look, can I take the peanut port, on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of power? Can I take my peanut port heads off and put these airflow 265 heads on and put a cam in it? Yeah, you can. You can do all that. You can put those on, put a cam in it, put a dual plane intake manifold on it, and it will be a lot better than the thing that you have. But quite honestly, the kind of camshaft that you could put in something that's a stock bottom end, and the amount of compression that you'd have and the displacement that you have, and if you had an RPM air gap on there, or you could put a single plane on there, you're just not going to be utilizing what that head has to offer. So on the lower end of the scale, that'd be like, the ultimate thing would be, I'm just going to take the peanut port heads off, keep the factory fuel injection on there, the throttle body injection, which is just awful, and then I'm going to put the airflow research heads on. Okay, that's a terrible idea. There's no reason to spend the money on $3,000 heads or whatever they cost to get next to nothing, not because the heads don't work. We know that they support 625 horsepower or more. We know that they'll do that. You don't have enough motor to take advantage of that. So the more that you have done on the motor, the more that they will help what you're trying to get done. So we put, I think we did it with a 468, but we put, dome pistons in it just so that we could get 10 or 11 to 1 compression, probably more like 10 or 10 and a half. And then those heads, and then a good sized camshaft, and then a good intake manifold, and a big carburetor and all that stuff, so that we could get it up near, get some fairly high horsepower numbers for that thing relative to the flow rate of those heads. And that worked out good. But again, on the very high end of that, I wouldn't chase after the last 5 or 10 horsepower that those heads are capable of. I just go to a bigger head. And on the very low end of that, and that's on the very high end, on the very low end of that, I also wouldn't pick those heads. I would pick something else. Maybe just do a ported and bigger valve peanut port head for your mild cam throttle body injected, or if you went with a dual planet carburetor, that would also work. Just do that, or put some 049s on there, or mill them or something, or an AFR enforcer or something that's less expensive, because you're just not taking advantage of everything that head has to offer. And yes, they're better, but you're not going to get the 100 horsepower out of them like you could if you had a better motor. So on both ends of that, no. Lots of places in the middle, yeah, they're really good heads, as are a lot of the things that we've done with AFR, and not just AFR, Trick Flow and Dart and Edelbrock. A lot of those guys have a lot of heads that will obviously be way better than the factory stuff. That's not a very high bar. You also can, and I'm sure we'll get comments from this, you also can make power, guys. I port the head and I get, I port stock heads and I get more than that. That's all fantastic. I think that's great. You should do what you could do, but the problem is not everybody can do that. Like the heads that I have for the Trick Flow 220 ASCAS heads that the guys from BTR ported. Those are great and I love them and they work really well. But not everybody has a set of heads like that, and duplicating those is a difficult thing. So a guy that is the best at porting a set of heads, everybody doesn't get that. Just he gets that. So even though it's possible, it's not very probable that everybody's going to have that kind of thing. So we'll see what you guys got going on. Getaway, what's going on? Crash, riding home from the girlfriends. No texting. There you go. Going to snow. It's 60 today. Oh, that's nice. It was beautiful today. It was in the 70s. Brodex BB3 380s. Yeah, for your peanut port motor. That's perfect. Alan, what's going on? Eric, what's going on? How much torque and horsepower gain can be had by only a head swap and a 502 horsepower 502? Use AFR 265s, remove the 290 GM ovals. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look and see if I have any kind of comparison. I might have a comparison of that in the oval port head test that we did, because that Edelbrock head might have been one of the ones that we did. So I can check that and see, and kind of give you an idea. And again, like I was talking about, the gains that you would get are going to be a function of the motor that you're testing it on. On a mild motor, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't change it. On a motor where you're trying to get a lot more power, I would do it. I'm pretty sure this is a 468. Big block Chevy oval port. So final, no, I have an Edelbrock RPM XT. And I think that one actually did fairly well. I think I did like those heads. Those did pretty good. The AFR was definitely better, but the AFR made 615 or something. Yeah. And the Edelbrock made 600. The AFR was better through most of the curve, and by a pretty good bit here in the 4,500 to 5,000. So 530, 550. Yeah, so 20 foot-pounds kind of in the middle. But I don't know that I would make that change, and that's on a 600 horsepower motor. So I just don't know. But that is on the XT heads, which are good. And I don't think that the 290 ovals are going to be as good as those Edelbrock heads that we tested. What's the average power you've seen from people mildly rebuilding the 8.1? I don't know what you mean by mildly rebuilding. I have videos up where we've tested the 8.1. We did a cam thing, we did an intake thing, so you can kind of see what those things are going, how much power those add. I bring my L94 in my house so I can figure out how to convert the standalone wiring harness. All right. Waiting on my shop to be delivered so I can put it up. Slowly tinkering with the Nova, getting close. What did you get like a DIY metal building assembly thing kind of deal? Excuse me. Let's see. I got a kiddie pool for a wash basin. There you go. Last Saturday, got the truck back from the transmission shop. Stock torque converter in it. Vet Planetary. I think they tuned it because it doesn't stall under throttle, snap, and reverse or crawl. That's good. It's good to have the transmission correct and be able to drive around and have it not stall. Did you gamble with a pair of 706 over a pair of 317 heads on a 5.3? I asked, since the 706 heads are more prone to cracking, and obviously the 317 heads sitting around. That's why I asked. What are you doing with the rest of the motor? I don't think I'd put 317 heads on a 5.3. I have 706 heads on my 5.3, and I have 350,000 miles on it. Watched the Ford 400 video. Convinced my friend to pull the 400 out of his Continental 79 Continental Town car. Okay. Desmog it, advanced cam time, put 4-barrel induction on, dual exhaust. Looking forward to the results. Yeah, you probably can get maybe generic headers for that and a dual exhaust. 4-barrel definitely helps, as you saw there. You can advance the stock cam. Honestly, I think I'd put a cam in it, put a small cam in it, like 258 or 268 kind of duration at 50. I mean, advertised duration. Put a mild cam in it like we did on the mild buildup. I designed what I wanted. They manufactured all the beams and sent it to me 60 by 40 by 16. Maybe too much shop, but I bought it and paid for it now. Hey, what I have never seen in a shop is like empty space not being utilized. All of the free space is like having counter space. Like all of the counter space in any shop, that always has something on it. And the same thing with the floor space. I've not seen that just go, you know what? I wish we had more stuff that we could put in here. The first couple of days you might have that, but after a while you won't. It's my turn for dyno time next week. Not going to be moving as much air as those heads. It's a mile 331, hoping to get 420 at the crank. Mike, what is the combination? Did you tell us back here before? I've never touched the TCM. I got it tuned last year, so they did their magic. Nice. Complete engineered kit to be assembled on site. Do you assemble it, or do they come out and do that? Get a 16-foot so I can do a mezzanine. That's really smart, because storing stuff, I mean, utilizing all of the space that you have is very, very good. I know when I got I have a couple of storage spaces. And when I built shelves, I built 8-foot shelves. So, you know, with a bunch of shelving on them, and I could stack stuff all the way at the top. How about a cam recommendation for mid 500 and the AFRs on what is that on? What motor is that on? 383. Is it on a 383 or small block? I'll assemble it, but it's daunting. Is it? Are the frames? Are they? Do you have to rivet them together? Do you bolt them together? 24 grand to have assembled. Yeah, I think I'd be doing it myself too. Me and my buddies, or Lisa and I and my sons. Yeah, crane would be helpful there. 216, 224, air gap, 11R, and 10.5 to 1. Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be a really good, on a 331, that'll be a really fun combination. I like those 11R heads. Cold form steel bolt together. There you go. I think it's worth putting an M122 on a 408 stroker, or should I go for something bigger? An M122, you're going to run out of blower on a stroker, depending on how much power you want to make. I mean, for instance, our G32 or G42 turbo would take you beyond 1,000 horsepower on a 408. A 122 is going to be like half of that. I mean, it's going to be 600 or something maybe. And to do that, you're going to have to spin that blower fairly high, and you're going to have to do something to the inlet of that blower too. I mean, it will be better than NA depending on what if you're NA stroker, like a 408, if it already makes 550 or 600, it's going to be using most of what that blower has to offer. Like we were talking about with getting at the end of stuff, let's say you get 700 out of it by really spinning it and stuff. It's just too much work. But you should be able to sell that blower, though, because people want those for the smaller motors, a 4.8 or a 5.3. Rob 383. It's a 454. Okay, so let me go back here. Cam for 500 horsepower, and if you're using the AFRs, and are you going to try to do this with a dual plane, or most people would probably put a single plane on there, like a Victor Jr. and an 850 or something on there for mid 500s. As long as you have piston to valve clearance, I think I would go with like a 236, 242 cam. Motor City, what's going on? It's built after watching all of your dynos. I'm trying to max fun factor, but keeping a vacuum for drivability. Yeah, I think you'll like. Is this a manual trans or is it an automatic trans? What is it in the Mustang? Those cars are pretty light too, which I like. I have two, so contact me if anybody needs one. Oh, on the 122s. Tom Demuse, I don't know, I have to ask Tom. He might have somebody that wants those. He might have somebody. Yesterday we got rain. No rain today. It was nice. Got to get out and ride on the bike. Saw a bunch of turkeys. A gang of turkeys. It's like West Side Story. Or a Michael Jackson video. I guess all of those are just dating myself. West Side Story is way before my time. Big turkeys, though. And then took the dogs for a run. So I got to do it all. Order for my wife. She uses hand controls. Very cool. Is it a like a C4 or C6 or something? South Australia. What's going on, man? Glad you could make it. Digging the guys from down under. I'd love to come there. Dual plane, okay. Dual plane, maybe with a small carb spacer, 1/2-inch open space or something. Richard out of Austin, it's in your opinion and your stress testing of 302 blocks around 500 horsepower cracks the blocks. I don't know that it's a power level necessarily. I don't know. I mean, we've done way over that. We've made power levels that are way beyond that and not broke them. And we've made some that are, well, I don't know if I've ever broken one at 500. So no, I don't think that would be it. And I think it would be how much torque you make, and then how much. I think it might also be a frequency thing. We broke them with Jimmy at HP, but he was shock loading it at the drag strip. Similar situation at Cletus, but not as much money involved. Just moved into my new house, the airport. Cool. So do you have a shop there? T4 right now, 3.0 gears, eventually going with a for our 70 with 355s. That will be a lot of fun because putting gears in it, I went round and round in my 5-liter Mustang with a bunch of different gear sets, everywhere from 373 down to 273, actually down to 241, because I was doing, all I cared about was top speed. I was doing the Silver State stuff. But going from a 3-speed with a 308 gear to an overdrive trans with 355s will just make that thing awesome. Have to say the manual for another car, and there you go. That's all good stuff. After I did the test on these 265 airflow heads, I was like a really big fan of those. I'm like, why are more people not using these? They probably sold a bunch after I did all those stories on them. But why are more people not doing these? These things are awesome. You know, especially for guys, I want to make torque. They did do that. In fact, along with their 615 horsepower, they made 558. Do we get to 60? No, 559 foot-pounds. And it was more than 500 from, we started at 3,500. It would have been below that all the way out to 6,400. 6,500 was like 497 or something. So it's got it's got an abundance of torque. I think that had a big cam in it. Test description. Yeah, it had a 248, 254 cam. It was an XR300 roller comp. So the 560, 580 lift, 110. Again, not an optimum cam by any stretch. It was just a shelf comp cam that we had. We had the dyno headers on it, aluminum roller rockers on it. It had that was a boat pan, a V-drive boat pan. Little Brock Victor Jr. normally 7, kind of normal, with a 950 Holly. $40 degrees of timing is what that thing made best power at. I'm a custom car builder, painting, building engines. Nice new shed, hoist, boost. Oh, that'll be awesome, dude. Yeah, send me some pictures when you get it done. I'm curious to see. Is there anybody making better heads? Yeah, I don't know. Be hard pressed to. I mean, the thing that I like is that, and I don't know that I helped usher this along because other guys did tests too. But when you had big shootouts with cylinder heads and stuff, I think guys hopefully took some of that stuff to heart, because what I did, like, I was fairly thorough in the testing that I did. And obviously one combination is not going to mean everything for every cylinder head. But if you lose by 50, if your head loses to another head by 50 horsepower, it's not because that's a bad combination. It's because your head is not as good as the other head that was 50 horsepower better. So I would think that would give incentive to guys to, make something better. I know for a long time, because I have been doing this a long time, that we always thought of Edelbrock heads as kind of middle of the road heads. Like they were, they're better than stock, but they're not an upper echelon of heads. And then these XT heads came out. I'm like, wow, they really stepped their game, and they were like really close to the AFR heads. And this was years ago, so I don't know what they have out now, but they got really, really close. I'm so like, okay, they're not a middle. Those heads anyway, those XT heads were not middle of the road heads. Those were kind of top tier heads. It was impressive. Will be your cam choice for a C4 with a Vortec 355 with the dual plane EFI stainless exhaust, lightweight flywheel. You got to tell me what. It's a dual plane, so that gives me an idea. It's a small block Chevy 350-ish. That gives me an idea. When you say stainless exhaust, are you putting headers on it? I mean, there should be lots of headers available for C4 chassis. And then, so what kind of RPM do you want? Are you talking about, do you care about power like with a dual plane? We could still get 6,500 with that. Do you want more drivability? Do you want idle vacuum? Like, you got to tell me those things that you want, because even with that combination, there's a bajillion different camshafts that somebody could think is the optimum one for that. The coworker has to decide if he rebuilds his EZ502 in a 69 Camaro. First of all, awesome combination. Or go LS. I'm sure the 265s would work well. They will. They will definitely work well. I don't know how often he drives it or what his desired power level is, but with does he does he want to put a tunnel ram on it and a big cam and big heads and make 700 or something? What's your email? I'll send you some pictures of the cars I've painted and what the new living arrangements look like. I'll put my email address down here. Okay, there's my email if you want to send me something. For a small cubic inch, smaller Chevy under 331 inch, high RPM, would you run a 660 center squirter? No, a 660 center squirter is way old school technology. I mean, I might run a pair of those on a tunnel ram if I just wanted to be period correct. Otherwise, I think anymore, and if I was choosing a carburetor, I think I would pick an Edelbrock, the VRS stuff. They're really good. A 650 double pumper. Barely streetable, but good for tail of the dragon. Okay. So with the dual plane and a 650 or 750 for that small block, you could go above a 224, 230. You could, if you wanted, go like if somebody makes one that's a 228 or a 230, and then 238 or 240 on the exhaust. But if you have those stock heads, if you have stock Vortec heads, you're going to be kind of limited. I'm still thinking that you'd be happiest with like a 224, 230, 224, 232 cam. He's thinking 600 plus, but boost is always a looming option, so it'll be built with ring gap. Okay. Yeah, that's why I like to do them at 600 or 10.5 to 1 or so. And ZZ502 is a good starting platform because it's a big bore already. Yes, I don't tell him. It's perfect. Not sure how high he wants to go. More is always the correct answer. Yeah, honestly, if I had a 69 Camaro and I had a big block 69 Camaro and all I wanted to do is drive to Cars and Coffee, I wouldn't put too cantankerous of a motor in it. I would want something that goes out and starts. And the nice thing about having a 500-inch motor is if you have a 500-inch motor, that even one that makes 600 horsepower, it's it's probably going to make 600 foot-pounds or more. And so it's probably going to make 650 or something. So if you're wanting to spin the tires or whatever, it could have enough cool sound to it. You have enough cam to do that, and it can still drive around, So would a 5.3 with 706 SHC cam with 8mm turbo make stock block looking? Yeah, you'll be fine. If you're wanting to do the 5.3 with pump gas, I might be tempted to put the 317s on there. Not because I'm worried about the 706 heads, but if you're trying to get power on pump gas, the problem is that you could do that. You could make more power probably on pump gas with the lower compression heads because you get farther away from detonation with those. But they are going to be softer down low, and if you have an 80mm turbo, that's going to be. Do you already have the turbo and the Stage 2 cam? Because I wouldn't pick either one of those. You're going to do 91. Yeah. You should look at if you don't have your cam, look at a BTR Truck Norris or our own low buck truck if you want something that's going to drive around really well. And particularly if you're going to go the 317 heads, I would go with our low buck truck or even the Ripper cam and then our G42 turbo. That will easily take you to 800 or 1,000, and it will be more responsive than your typical 80 millimeter turbo. 51 Buick, I have to take the head in to get the seats done for unleaded fuel. Is a reason not to deck it for more compression. Well, yeah, it's all original with a straight 8 and 6 volt system. I have no idea on that how thick the decks are, but yeah, it's definitely beneficial. I don't know, not a 51 Buick expert, but milling the head can be good. Sometimes you can get away with just a thinner head gasket. I mean, I would surface the head just to make sure that it's straight, and then if you're going to do valve seats or something, or guides or something in it, then you can do that. You might be able to, I don't know how thick the factory head gaskets are, if it's 50 or 70 or 90 or whatever it is, you can put something thinner on there and also get more compression. What's the problem? You guys go way too big a turbo. You can have plenty of a 78 millimeter 5.3 for a stock step and have way more power than you think you'll have until you grow into it. Yeah, if you want 800 to 1,000, I would go with our G42. We drove that around on a stock 5.3 in Jimmy's Tahoe, and it worked great. Richard, I have an NOS brand new in the box, big block Chevy, aluminum heads. What would you think that they're worth? I don't know what that part number is. 1401, 1077. Okay. I don't know which heads those are. Let's see what they say about them. I don't want a picture of them. I don't care about that. I don't know what these are. Oh, 77. Oh, so are they like the L89 heads? The thing that I would be worried about if they are, I think that they're is that a factory replacement head? If they're an L89 head, like that factory GM head, and they're that old, I'd be worried about them being porous for one thing. But there's lots of them for sale that I found. So you can just look it up and see what people are selling them for. Late to the party, what were the numbers that put down with the heads? Which one are you talking about? Yeah, it's a really old video. With the AFR 265 heads, it made 615 or something. Does the FR make all this power on a big West Chevy with small ports and volume? Stock 990s or 325. Did Chevy engineers get it wrong? Well, Chevy engineered those heads back in the 60s. So a lot has changed since then. And they did not engineer those heads to maximize the airflow with a given volume. So I wouldn't equate those two things. L88 heads better than the 074. Are the 265s worth the money? I can't decide that. You guys would have to decide that. I can tell you everything that they did, and also did a fairly good explanation, I thought, of when I would use those and when I would not use those. But you'd have to decide what other things might solve what kind of issue you're trying to fix. These are brand new, NOS never run. Okay, yeah, you can take a look on there and see what guys are selling them. I didn't look to see if there were versions of those that guys had for sale that were new. I would think some, like, are they, do those have any kind of date coding on them or anything? I mean, is it something that somebody would want because they have the right date coding on them that they could put on their 71 LS6 or something like that? Where'd you explain at the beginning of this video? How far are you from Murrieta? West Tech is pretty close, not well, reasonably close to Murrieta. That's in Southern California. I'm in Florida and do a lot of smoking meats. Not sure if you're into barbecue. I am very much into barbecue, and such a place called Destination Smokehouse in California. It's popping on the internet. Do you sell that stuff to them or something? 1992, never put on a big block. Okay, so it's not, they're not original like L89 heads from the mid 60s to, it's the same head up to 71. Now they had open and closed chamber versions of those, but that might have been that might just be a GM one, like a GM performance replacement deal. I know that the guy who has West Tech has some L88 heads. No, just got big into it. Currently cooking for yourself and for your family. Okay. No, I do like steaks. Smoking in the box or out. In fact, I had a little excitement this last Christmas. I was doing a what are we doing? Prime rib, I think. And I way underestimated the amount of time that was going to take. And so instead of cooking it all day like I was supposed to, I put it in like late in the day before Christmas. And I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work. So what I did was rush down to a local store that we have. And they have like a pretty good butcher section. It's like a Mexican market, and they got awesome stuff there. And they said, well, so I need steaks. They said, well, how many do you need? I said, well, how many do you have? And they had like, I don't know, 8 or 9 of them or whatever. We had a bunch of people here, so I'll take everything that you have. So I got all those, got back, fired up the barbecue, put them all on. And so instead of prime rib, we had steak. And I actually had a bunch of leftover. And then I also had a full prime rib left over too. So we had an unusual amount of carnivore stuff. 5.3 Chuck Norris cam, 1000cc FICs, dual Hellcats, G42 and 480. Will Joel be able to tune it, including the trans? Yes. Yeah, the cam and the injectors, that's already been done. The pumps are not going to be an issue. With the turbo, that's already been done. 480, I'm sure he's done that. That shouldn't be an issue. I remember you saying that before. Yeah, live and learn. Yeah, it was a very, very quick pivot, but I know it's cool though. You know, you gotta make stuff happen, man. You gotta get in let's make it happen mode. I'm thinking there is this is like, what was this? I can't remember if this is, I think it was Christmas. I don't think it was Thanksgiving. I'm like, there's nothing open. These guys were open part of the day or whatever. That's all good. The steaks are good though. They definitely were. And you know, you can never have like too many leftover steaks. That's like awesome. I usually make a few of those and then have them for lunch. I like them. What I like is with the King's Hawaiian bread, I make sliders out of them. Like, cut the steaks up so they're small. I actually go and get stuff at Walmart. They actually have the size steaks that I use for that. It works really good. I just make a couple of those, cut them up, boom, King's Hawaiian bread sliders. It's like a little slice of heaven. Christmas story, the end up at the Chinese restaurant. Yep, I've been there before. It won't be left over yet. Have you yet to try that? You toast the bread? I don't. I don't even toast the bread. I don't even put anything on it. I mean, I put stuff on the meat when I'm cooking it, but nothing on the bread. I just slice the Hawaiian bread in half, meat, bread, boom. Go for it. I don't know, something about the King's Hawaiian bread just kind of makes it. Brett went 5s today. Yep. Although I have to say, I do like, and like I remember watching Dale Jr. talk about this, that he said that, yeah, would go out with him and his wife or whatever, would go out with these other NASCAR guys, and they'd go out and he would get A1 and put it on his steak. And they're like, I can't put A1 on steak. I'm like, dude, I like A1. I always have. I don't put it on these when I have these sliders. Only because it kind of makes the bread, like, I don't want the bread to get soggy, but I do like me some A1. I like making brisket. Brisket would be good also. There's no bad thing. I like prime rib on there. We go to buckhorn. Like maybe you guys have buckhorns where you are, and get that, and just get the meat and go by the store and get some Hawaiian bread. Boom, you're good. A1's good. I don't care what people say. Yeah, and that's what Dale, I watched Dale Jr. stuff. I think he's good. And that's what he's saying. He says, yeah, everyone says, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what good steak is. He's like a blah, 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 blah. He goes, I like what I like. It tastes good. I like it. So what? I don't care what you think. Perfect. That's how people should be. You like it? That's fine. You should like it. You don't like it? That's also good. Then don't eat it. Concluded that the pork style is less important. My dad has a Marine 454 and he wants to put it in a 4x4. I think 75 series Land Cruiser. Nice. Any red flags? The engine's in good condition. No, the motor's fine. I don't know. I don't know about fitment for what you're doing. I obviously don't know what the engine bay looks like. Steakhouse and burgers is nice. That's right. What is it? Chopped ham? No, it's chopped steak. I remember the A1 guys doing their big push to try to get A1. They were trying to get it to basically work into the market share for ketchup because people put ketchup on burgers and stuff. And so they were trying to erode into that to get people. And I like A1 sauce on burgers. I think it's really good. I also am not a huge fan of hamburger buns. I think that's just too much. That's too much bun. I would rather have burgers on regular bread. I'm just weird. And also, and a lot of guys get thrown off by this, but particularly guys from New York, I think. But on hot dogs, I put ketchup and mustard on hot dogs. I like mustard on them, but I like ketchup and mustard on them. Steakhouse and burgers, nice. I like the King's Hawaiian bread dipped in spinach dip or dill dip. Yeah, I'm not spinach dip I like. Not pickle stuff though. I'm not a big pickle fan. I hope you received the emails. I don't know. I haven't taken a look and see. I don't see any. Let me check my Spammerino. How long is the Great Wall of China? Trivia connection. I do not see anything in my inbox. Did you spell it correctly? There's only one E in B. My brother wouldn't eat a steak without A1. All he had was Heinz 57. I think it's called. Yeah, I remember that. Took the steak home to eat it with A1. And I agree with them. If all I had, I would just eat the steak by itself. I'm fine with that, especially if it's done right. I'm not a fan of Heinz 57. I don't really like that. I don't really care for it. Or also Worcestershire sauce, however you pronounce that. Not a huge fan of that. Although I think that A1 has that in it. But I just, it's the 11 urban spices. $500 worth of fines for tickets I got on my Trail 70 a while back. That's a lot. You must have been raging around. There's a few pictures of what my place looks like. I'm scared to put 265 or 290 AFR heads on a big block 540. Again, I wouldn't look at the port size because I think that that's a mistake for people. Just like there's a lot of LS guys that are like, oh, the 706 heads or the 862 heads are too small. I'm like, they're too small for what? They're not too small for any of your stock motors. They'll be fine. But how much power do you want to make would be my thing. I think we made 900 with, I know we made 800 with 290s. I think we made more than that. I think the brand is Mercruiser or Mercury. As far as strength, what do you think about the limiting factor power-wise of a fully forged bottom end at a 408? I think I can get to 2,000. Obviously, lots of gap. No, I don't think that the Ford. I mean, you might be able to touch that number, but if you're running a stock block, it's not. It's going to be questionable at that power level. Worcestershire. Yep. Good for adding in recipes, but it's strong. It is. It is. And it is used for that stuff. The same guy bought the NOS Big Block Chevy 077 heads from, has a brand new, never started first gen from 93 ZZ502 for sale. Asking, should I buy it? Has 163 aluminum for intake on it. Yeah, that 163 is pretty common. I think that's the intake manifold I have on that 396. 6,000 seems like a pretty good price for a running 502. Like using a little liquid smoke in my ribeyes and mushrooms. I don't think I've tried that, but I have heard good things about it. 1,500 good and safe. I don't think so. I don't think on any of the stock block stuff. I mean, I think guys are doing that. I just don't know how long that works. I think most guys that are running 1,500 and above are doing it with aftermarket blocks for any length of time. Capizzi, I think, is doing the Siamese bore aluminum 5.3 blocks, and he's got to be making more than that. I just don't know how, but he's really good at it. He's really good at managing whatever power level that thing will accept as it's going down the track. So whatever that is, it's just like with detonation, you manage that. Or with timing, you can get away with a lot more timing on the top end. And so he seems to be really, really good at that. In fact, I was talking to Steve Morris about that. But you're going to have movement in the bottom end. The caps, I think, are going to move around and stuff. Good cylinder heads on a 452 wakes them up. Depending on what power level you're talking about, and then also what you're starting with. If you're starting with a Gen 5 motor, heads, cam, and intake make a big difference. I've seen guys gain 200 horsepower from that stuff or more. And so you can certainly do that. But if you're talking about a 454 LS6 that already has rec port heads on it, heads will make a difference, but those are already better than the rest of the stuff, so you get less of a gain. It's like starting out with factory LS heads. Well, are you starting out with a factory 706 head or factory LS3 head or factory LS7 head? How much gain are you going to get from an aftermarket on each one of those? Obviously, it's different. This is in a truck on 37s. Yeah, are you drag racing that? What are you doing with it? Liquid smoke's pretty strong. Yeah, I've heard that. Word stock iron blocks won't hold the heads over 12 to 1,500. Steve Morris was saying that he thought that the first thing that you should cure is head gasket sealing. And I think I would agree with that, but I was asking him about that. I'm like, we took the iron block with head gaskets and head studs and no receiver grooves or no copper head gaskets or any of that. I said, we took that to 1,500 and we made a lot of runs up in that range. And we're also doing it at a slower acceleration rate. He runs a fairly fast acceleration rate on his dyno. but even if you're running that in a vehicle, it's a fairly fast acceleration rate. But when we were talking about that, he said, yeah, I think that the head gasket issue would be the first thing that you want to serve or fix and address. But I said, well, but I said, how much farther past that is the block and the bottom end? I said, because I mean, even if you put a steel crank in it and aluminum rods or forged rods or pistons or whatever, I said, and then you fix your head gasket sealing. I said, how long is that stock block going to last? He goes, I think it's right after that. I said, yeah, I was kind of thinking that it's probably right after that. We know that the stock iron blocks will go 1,500. We've done that, but I don't know how many passes they'll go like that. Going to smoke brisket soon and finish off with some beef tallow when I wrap it. Let it go the rest of the way. Heard somewhere the 454 are cast, but not sure about marine version since it sits at 4,000 RPM all day. They had a lot of factory steel cranks. I don't know which year that is or anything. We've never heard a crank, so I'm not very concerned about cranks anymore. If I was doing a boat where it was sitting at wide open throttle for a really, really long time, I think I would put a steel crank in it. But for a street car, I don't think I'd be concerned about it. I mean, just look what we're doing with LS stuff. Just ordered angled milled 265s from AFR 71 C3 LS5. This deck, nice. Just got an order for an AFR cam from Andrews 242 248. Hope it wakes up. That should be a good one. My goal is to beat Hellcats with my truck. I don't think is that the 1,500 horsepower one? Yeah, you're not going to need 1,500 to beat Hellcats. Not if they have blowers on. Just have blowers on. 54 degrees. 454 is definitely the old school big block Chevy style. Low acceleration rate, low load. Well, a slow acceleration rate is more load. I have a daughter that's my F around and find out truck. Last ride of the year, I think, hit 24,000 miles over lunch. Nice. Get a Traeger smoker grill. Love mine. Yeah, I don't do a lot of smoking, though. You ever drive and ride in a jet boat? Yeah. I got one, but if you had to take it off the water. Yes, many times. Brule, although I never got to ride in his boat, but he had a drag boat. Like the old school way, wood pellets to me are not the way. However, the offsets like mine, you can go to bed. You gotta tend it. Yeah, that's all fine. People can all do the things that they want. I think I'll just convert this 454 to run in the truck first, and then worry about it later. 600 horsepower in a 75 series Land Cruiser sounds like a good way to end up upside down. Yeah, I would agree with that. That sort of procedure where you just get it in there and get everything working and then modify the motor, I think is a way better way to go. If you're doing a swap, do the swap, get it in there and just drive around with something stock, and then you can modify it. And that way you can enjoy it also while if you have to save money to, get the necessary things that you want to put on there and make it better. And then you figure out, like, you drive around, you're like, oh, well, this thing is going to need brakes before I add another 200 horsepower. It's a little iffy right now, or it's going to need suspension or whatever. Will a TSP chopper copper cam fit in my Trans Am with a 5.7? Yes, the camshaft's not going to care about it being an LS1. Have you bought that cam yet? Because if you want to spend about half of what that cam costs, we have other cams that do exactly what that one does. That's a good cam. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it, but if you're going to you want to save some money, we can save you some money. Yeah, that cam and the BTR Truck Norris, those are all good cams. Thinking in the future to upgrade an 80 series Land Cruiser chassis or suspension. What could you recommend with a stock converter? You can do that Chupacabra and a 5.3 with a stock converter. Just the tune has to be right. Our low buck truck. In fact, Jimmy right now is driving around in the Tahoe with our Truck Plus and a 5.3 with a stock converter and a turbo. And it doesn't matter whether it's turbo or NA if you're just driving around, because you're only concerned about like the stall speed of the converter. A higher stall converter is going to help no matter what, even on a stock cam. But you can, with the right tune, make all that work. Probably going to go with old Cobra brakes. Someone makes a bracket kit. Not sure if I would retain a stock Ranger booster or go with a Mustang one. Yeah, the Cobra brakes are good. I mean, that's essentially a PBR. If those are the ones you're talking about, that's a PBR Corvette caliper. That works good. Got 1 more minute, and I never had a poll. Drum roll, please. So it'll make a good change in my car. Yeah, that cam, like our cam, our low buck truck camshaft, that Chupacabra, the Truck Norris, about 60 horsepower gain. The thing with a 4x4 is being fast is actually scary. Just need Tesla-like torque, pull out of traffic. 600 horsepower sounds cool. Yeah, 600 foot-pounds probably would be better for that. Just want to say thanks for all the videos. Helped me out a lot. First car I'm pulling it out to upgrade the top end. That dang torque converter. Torque converters help a lot. From, if you have it tuned right, from 0 to 60, converter helps more than a cam does. So they work good. I'd like to do some testing with that. We'd like to do some draggy testing with that. Try to work with a converter company and do some of that. I think that would be cool. I think that would surprise a lot of people. I think if you're going the quarter mile, a cam is going to help more. But in the low part of the RPM range, of the launch range, the converter helps a lot. I think you saw a lot of different things, but I believe from you. Yeah, I'm not going to steer you wrong. I mean, like I said, all those cams do the same thing, and they work good. And I've dyno tested each one of them many, many times usually. FTI hits harder than Circle D. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Uncle Tony tried to throw that at me. Oh, it hits the converter harder. I'm like, I don't know what measuring that means. And unless some sort of direct back-to-back test was applied, I don't know how I could I match with an LS6 intake manifold. Yeah, you could put any sort of intake manifold on there that you want. It would be way better than an LS1 intake manifold. An LS6 is definitely better. A lot of the later LS1s came with LS6 intake manifolds. What's the best budget intake manifold? There's not going to be a budget intake manifold. If you have an LS6 intake manifold, that's really good. The next step up from that would be the fast intake manifold, and that's not a budget intake manifold. 454 versus 6 liter, also on dyno shootout. Under $400 or under 400 horsepower. I have already run all of those motors. Are you talking about stock ones? Stock 454s and stock 6 liters and stock 8.1s? The biggest motor wins that. It wins torque by a lot. Because of its bigness. Yeah, I don't know what kind of intake you're going to get for $400. Dude, I don't want to do a video on Ram truck stuff. Yeah, I don't know what you can get for $400. you might be able to get some of the inexpensive aluminum intake manifolds, like the high ram copy things, and some of the fabricated ones, but none of those are going to be good. Is the Comp Cam 292 Magnum cam still a good? I don't like the Magnum stuff because it's a single pattern cam. And it's a really, really old design. Their extreme energy cams are newer, but still really old. So there's better stuff. But again, your 200cc Victor Junior head. You're not making a ton of power with any of that. I wouldn't use a Magnum cam. I'd use an extreme energy cam if I was using a comp, or I'd just go to somebody else like Iski or Summit probably has cams for that. So if I can find an LS6 intake manifold, you should get it. Yeah, I don't know what kind of hood clearance you have, but a Trailblazer SS you can get for that kind of money. Gonna need the size of converter for the 351. I'm guessing 2500 or 28. Yeah, that would be fine. Trailblazer SS better than the is a LS6 intake better than Trailblazer SS? No, it's not. It's about the same. Ultimately, if we tested it on a higher horsepower thing, the Trailblazer SS would be better because it has a larger opening. So eventually that would come into play. But in terms of intake design, they're fairly comparable. The nice thing about a LS6 or the Dorman LS2 version that has the bigger throttle opening, which is expensive anymore, it may be hard to find, is they make really comparable power. But the low profile ones like the LS6 and that Dorman one will fit under the hood of a Camaros and Corvettes, where a Trailblazer SS will not. Motor City, you're old school. That's why you're building an old school small block. Yeah, but a Magnum cam was old school when they introduced the extreme energy. And that was a lot of years ago. Extreme energy has to have been out for 20 years. I'm trying to remember back, because I remember when the comp guys came and did a big dog and pony show at West Tech. And we're like, yeah, we have this extreme energy cam. And I think that the cam that they were comparing it to was a Duntov cam or an L79 cam. And the extreme energy cam was much, much smaller than these factory cams. And it made like 20 or 30 horsepower more. They're like, okay, all of the magazine guys were there at the time. They're like, how much, which one of these is going to make more power, and what's the power difference going to be? People were surprised. It was a lot. And like I said, I'm just not a huge fan of single pattern cams. Have you ever dynoed the Bruce Leroy cam from Powell? I have not. Yeah, the extreme energy lobes are pretty old. On that note, it is time to go. I promise tomorrow we'll have a poll. If we just went all in and just started going, but I will be back tomorrow.